Hello and welcome. I'm Mark Winkworth. You're listening to Tales of the Sea. Today we're going to be talking about kelp. Yeah, seaweed. All right, kelp is not synonymous with seaweed, but they are related. And those in the know tend to use the terms interchangeably. Now, the question we'll examine is this: is kelp one of the resources that will help sustain our planet and its ever-growing population in the future? My guest today is Liz McDonald. Liz is responsible for farming partnerships at Atlantic Sea Farms, a Maine-based company working alongside fishing families on the coast of Maine to cultivate regenerative kelp, one of several hundred species of seaweed on open ocean sea farms. But first, I want to look at a legend that pertains to our topic. It's from the northwest of the United States, what is now Washington State, and our heroine is a Samish Native American. Her name? Koqualawut. She's also known as the Maiden of Deception Pass, a young woman who sacrificed herself to ensure the survival of her people by agreeing to marry the Sea King. As the legend goes, one late summer day, while gathering shellfish, beautiful Koqualawut is pulled into deep water by a mysterious force. The force is revealed to be the Sea King, who is completely captivated by her radiance and stunning presence. Now, we've all seen artist representations of Neptune or Poseidon or whatever names we know for the king of the sea. Most of them portray him as a real hunk. So let's say Koqualawut is semi-captivated too. The Sea King proposes a deal to her. If she marries him, he will provide her people with a bountiful harvest of fish and clean water forever. Yeah, forever. Koqualawut finds the offer intriguing, and since he's captured her heart as well, she puts the offer to her parents. Her parents reluctantly agree to the arrangement, but only if the Sea King vows that he will allow her to return to visit her village once a year. All goes well. But as the years pass, her visits become more and more disturbing to the villagers. Now, as Queen of the Sea, Koqualawut begins to shed her human form. She's transforming into more of a creature of the sea. Her hair was now long braids of kelp, and her body was taking on a fish-like form. Her parents, seeing that their daughter's love for the Sea King is strong and true, as is her love for the underwater world, eventually make the difficult decision to release her from the promise so she could become one with her new home. Koqualawut assures them that from that day forward, she would forever watch over the waters and provide the bounties for her people for generations to come. From that time on, the Samish people believed that seeing kelp floating on the waters near Deception Pass was a sign of Koqualawut's presence, signifying her continued protection of the sea. Now, I can hear you listeners out there asking yourselves, where the heck is he going with this story? Well, just so happens I was eating a delicious kelp burger at Luke's Lobster the other day, right here in Portland, and it struck me. There's been a lot of talk and interest in seaweed lately, and I wanted to see how I could educate myself. I learned from Liz, my guest today, that seaweed has existed on the planet for millions of years. Seaweed in its various forms was likely harvested for several thousands of years, starting in China, Japan, South Korea, and by the indigenous peoples of the Americas. Seaweed was harvested for food, medicine, building materials, in fact, an amazing variety of uses. Although valued in many parts of the world today, it is not yet considered by most folks in the U.S. as an important part of their lives, let alone their diet. But Maine is working on that. In today's podcast, we're going to hear just how kelp is becoming an excellent crop in and around Casco Bay. Just a side note here, I caught up with Liz McDonald at Atlantic Sea Farms Operations Warehouse in Biddeford, Maine. There may be some echoes and other heavy machinery sounds on occasion, but know that we are at the source. So, Liz, let's start at the beginning. Seaweed and kelp are not the same thing. The terms seem to be used interchangeably. How do they relate?
Kelp is a type of seaweed, but not all seaweeds are kelps.
Right. And I know you've got 3 different families of seaweed. You've got brown, you've got red, and you have green. And I think and kelp is brown, correct?
It's almost like when you're talking about a breed of, a dog, like a golden retriever. Not all dogs are golden retrievers, but golden retrievers are dogs, right? That's where we are right there.
Okay, that's clear. Is seaweed a plant?
It is not a plant as we think of terrestrial plants. It is a macroalgae. And so seaweeds, algae, they have their own separate kingdom when we're talking about, the order of species on the world. And they are, one of the things our in-house mycologist likes to say is we are more closely related to mushrooms than we are seaweeds, or seaweeds are to terrestrial plants. So they're very much their own organism.
An organism that grows in water. With the earth about 70% water, gives seaweed or kelp lots of places to thrive.
There really is a small requirement of a footprint of actual space needed to cultivate, found in every ocean worldwide. There are different species that are in different locations, obviously, but they are found in every single ocean. So what we're focusing on here in the Gulf of Maine, we're really talking about a very small footprint. So the scale of aquaculture in total in the whole state of Maine, including finfish, shellfish, seaweeds, only takes up 0.0005% of all of the in-state water.
So, Liz, what about other states in the country, other places in the world?
There are other states and many other countries globally that are pursuing seaweeds and the farming of seaweeds, and have been for centuries, for millennia.
Well, I recently read that China, Japan, and South Korea have become the biggest growers.
They have farm seaweeds and in the wild harvest of seaweeds, too.
Let's go back a little bit, because I'd love to know how you were first pulled into this career. Tell us a little bit about where you grew up, and if you remember, what was the first experience with the sea, the one that really got you hooked?
I'll start out by saying I'm a native New Englander. Grew up in Connecticut and spent some time before moving to Maine living in the Midwest. Had a really difficult time being landlocked.
You and me both.
Always spending time along the coast growing up. One of my driving factors really was a book that I read. I think one of the authors that you've actually interviewed on your show, but The Secret Life of Lobsters.
Oh, of course.
Incredible.
It is.
And really changed my longing to be part of the marine world, to the point that I studied marine biology when I went to school. And that's what brought me to Maine. I've been living here for the past 15 years. I never left. Once I discovered aquaculture and that there was a sustainable way to grow food, to feed the growing population on the planet, and to incorporate the marine world and all the organisms that are within it, I was hooked. I really started my journey in mussel farming in the Gulf of Maine and spent multiple years working full-time on the water.
All right. And I remember you'd mentioned you did some scallop farming as well.
And eventually seaweed.
Right.
Continued work in research industry that led me to Atlantic Sea Farms, and here I am now. This is my 9th season working with farm seaweeds in the Gulf of Maine.
So Trevor Corson's book, The Secret Life of Lobsters, had a real hand in your career decision. It's very cool.
A completely immersive book, so much to the point that I made my own personal pilgrimage out to the Cranberry Isles and had to really go and see that area of Maine living here. And one of my favorite summers of my life was working in a lobster hatchery area of MDI.
MDI, that would be Mount Desert Island for those non-Mainers listening in. And that experience
has definitely shaped a lot of what I pursued.
Right, marine biology.
It was a way for me to connect a passion with my love for science, my love for writing, literature, and then the social interactions and how the ocean really shapes people's lives, how they depend on it, and how collaboration is a part of making that wheel turn all the way around.
I think that's what's exciting about what you're doing now, focusing on a unique collaboration with farmers. So tell me a little bit about your education prior to coming to Maine.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to have a marine biology teacher in high school that offered an opportunity that I was able to be selected for to go to the island of Bermuda, and I worked for a summer as an intern at the Bermuda Zoo and Aquarium. As a young adult, that was an amazing opportunity to get hands-on skills being in a tropical environment.
Which led to a bit of an aha moment, as I recall.
Okay, maybe I don't want to clean tanks my whole life either. I kind of want to do something that's a little bit more impactful here, right?
Understandable.
I wanted to do something that was really about people's lives, and also that's moving forward in something that's mission-driven.
On that note, you mentioned mission. What specifically is American Sea Farms' mission, and how does your work contribute to that mission and their vision?
At Atlantic Sea Farms, we're a women-run company. We're a small local Maine company as well, and our mission is to work with independent family farmers on the ocean to grow one of the most nutrient-dense, sustainable crops that has a short growing time as well.
Liz, you mentioned that you like the seasonal aspect of the work as well. I don't know if we talked about it, but kelp is a winter crop. It's seeded in the fall, harvested in the spring, and that allows fishermen, specifically lobster fishermen, whose season is generally winding down in the late fall, to become involved in kelp farming. And what's more, adding kelp farming to the mix can provide these fishermen and women year-round livelihood. Liz, it seems to me that makes for one robust industry.
And they also are the people that have the boats, they have the infrastructure, they have access to the coastline and that vast knowledge of what is happening where on the water. And so being able to say, okay, these people really have a skill set, but there needs to be a market for this product, right?
A market for the kelp, you mean?
A way to get the product out into the consumer's hands and in a product format that's easily digestible, something that is, okay, I know what this is and I can use it every day.
Connecting with the lobster fishermen as a strategy makes total sense to me. But this also means that they need to get their licenses, permits, and so on to farm kelp, in addition to their lobster license. So just how difficult is it to get a kelp license?
We support their journey in all aspects, from getting their original permits from the state of Maine in order to have their farm leases, to figuring out the best species to grow on their farm site, all the way to providing a buyback of their product, free seeds to start their crop, and technical hands-on assistance. Seaweed also works really well in the state of Maine for commercial fishermen because it is a winter crop. So it is counter-cyclical to their spring and summer typical lobster fishing season here.
But this wasn't always the case for fishermen in Maine, correct?
So in the past, fishermen in the state of Maine have had many other fisheries to participate in outside of lobster. They've been able to do urchins, shrimp, scallops, groundfish, and in the recent past 25 years or so, most of those fisheries have either completely closed or they have shrunk drastically.
I imagine adaptability is the key here for these fishermen. Having all your eggs in one basket is pretty risky.
Anything that's supporting in terms of a bait business, ice businesses, fuel services, people that work in boat building and marine construction that are supporting that shoreside infrastructure. There's a huge trickle down. And then also the tourism industry that we have here in Maine that's based largely on the great seafood that we have in the summer and the iconic harbor views that you come to see. Our mission here at Atlantic Sea Farms is to keep our working waterfront communities thriving and investing in themselves.
Right. I would think that all Mainers wholeheartedly support that mission in service of the entire coastal fishing community. With the farming of kelp in the winter, harvesting in the springtime, thereby supplementing their income before the primary fishing season begins in the spring. It's interesting. I hadn't put it together before, but you mentioned the fisheries for sea urchins, shrimp, and other fish that were a big part of the winter industry for many years. So kelp really represents a chance to fill in that gap, right? And I can only assume that climate, sea temperature changes, various other factors played a big part in causing the rapid decline of those fish stocks.
Absolutely.
Well, let's just talk for a moment, just to give folks a perspective. How many pounds of kelp were harvested, let's say, in the past year? And how does that compare to previous years?
So seaweed farming starts in the fall, typically in the months of late October, early November in the state of Maine. And the crop grows over the winter, all the way until the spring when it's harvested in May. What typically happens is we see people harvest for multiple weeks. And last year in 2024, our partner farmers harvested 1.3 million pounds of seaweed.
Wow.
And that's a huge increase up from only 30,000 back in 2018.
And that's for the entire state.
Correct.
How many companies are there like Atlantic Sea Farm? Are there others of the same model, basically?
Not that I'm aware of the same model. I mean, we at Atlantic Sea Farms work directly with farmers. So we ourselves don't do any of the farming as an independent company. We don't own any farms.
But you do operate a state-of-the-art nursery.
Correct. Where we produce seeds for our partner farmers, and those are for free, which would roughly be like a $10,000 investment if you were a terrestrial farmer starting a farm or an oyster farmer buying seed from hatchery. We also have a in-house production facility that's located in Biddeford, as well as our nursery.
And that's where you process the sea kelp.
Correct. We process all of the kelp once it's harvested here in the state of Maine. And then we create our own retail products and have a sales and marketing team that then move those products out into the consumer basis. Mm-hmm. Additionally, we sell products as ingredients, wholesale, and to our retail customers.
Well, I've taken a look at some of those products, not only the kelp burger that I found really tasty. There's a few kinds of seaweed salads, kelp powder, kelp flakes, body care products. It's pretty amazing. Atlantic Sea Farms really a one-stop shop for your clients, from supplying the seed to setting up their farm, technical supervision through the growing season and harvesting, and then you buy their product. I mean, what more could a farmer ask?
And that's one of the biggest values of our partnership, really, because the farmers are excellent at their work on the water. They're excellent at being aware of quality, what they want their end result to be, and very efficient at getting that kelp off the farm and to the dock. Everything past that landing at the dock, Atlantic Sea Farms does. We pay for all the trucking of the product, all the cold storage, and really do the work of the product innovation to get that consumer ready. Because kelp right out of the water doesn't have that same value that an oyster does right out of the water, ready to eat.
Sure.
So there has to be a little bit of massaging that happens to get that ready on the shelf and ready to eat.
Again, did not really think of that. You pull a lobster out, kind of ready to sell. Pull an oyster out, same thing. Pull mussels out, clean them up. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're ready to go. Scallop, same thing. Kelp, got to do some work. This is an enormous investment, and maybe it's the reason there are not a lot of other companies like Atlantic Sea Farm.
I would agree. We're really doing something that is transformative in a way that we are multiple businesses all under the same umbrella.
One of the reasons I was so excited to talk to you specifically, the company, is that you're so hands-on with the farmers. Could you walk us through an engagement with a farmer kind of from beginning to the first harvest?
When I started with the company almost 5 years ago, we were doing a recruiting of candidates to be new farmers up and down the coast. I will say today, there is no more recruiting. People are very interested and want to pursue this as part of their marine-based business. Someone comes to us and they say, I have a boat, I'm a commercial lobsterman, I'm here in Maine, and I want to become a kelp farmer. If they have, the right skills and tools already in place, that's step one. And we only work with commercial fishermen or professional aquaculturists. And the first thing that has to happen is you need to talk with your community and you need to find a good place to have a farm site. There is a site selection process that happens. So we're making sure that there's no impact to navigation, no impact to existing commercial fishing, no impact to any landowners. It's a public process. And so anyone that's interested can be involved in this process, and there are multiple steps for the public to get involved through the State Department.
So then first step, find a good spot and apply for a lease.
That process does take anywhere from 2 to 3 years to get a lease from the state currently. So it's not like you can start farming immediately. But applying for that application is something that myself and our team here at Atlantic Sea Farms helps our farmers do. It's about a 50-page application that does take coordination. So fill out your farm application, apply to the state, you wait, and once the state grants your application, then you can really start your business. At that point, you have your lease in hand, you're granted, then get your gear, you get all your equipment in place, and you set your anchors. That's step one.
And what about the actual equipment, Liz? Is it visible to someone looking out on the water?
So most of the farm equipment is all under the surface of the water, so there really isn't a surface footprint to see other than some buoys, and that fits in pretty well. That happens in October. What we're doing here at Atlantic Sea Farms is getting all of the seed spools ready for our farmers. So that's starting in September. It takes about a month to 2 months to get all of that prepared and ripe and ready to go on the farm.
Okay, so I'm the farmer. I've got all my gear set in place. So next?
The seed is ready for you. Let's seed the farm.
Bring it on.
And this happens over a 2-day period. Typically, when you have the most flat, calm, clear weather conditions that you can get in November. And for a new farmer, I typically go out and we do actual seeding the farm together.
So things are looking good. You've answered all my questions. Now we're off and running. So what does maintenance look like from that point on?
Between the farmers checking on their farms themselves and us checking on the farms, there is weekly checkups happening. People are looking at the kelp. We're making sure that everything is growing to schedule. We're looking for quality. We're looking for size, color, taste. And so that's happening all the way from January to late March, early April. And in April is when the harvest season begins. That's when, I'm really talking with the farmers every day and we're saying, okay, today's the day, go out, here's all your supplies, here are your bags to put your kelp into, and working to coordinate who's going to land all their kelp on a single day. Typically, I'm also going out for a first harvest with farmers too. So we're spending a whole day on the boat together, looking at all the kelp, grading the kelp, making sure that anything that shouldn't be brought to the processing facility is not included in perfectly packaged bags that they're making. And those are roughly 1,000-pound bags.
1,000-pound bags. Wow.
Anywhere from 5 to 10, sometimes 15,000 pounds in one haul, depending on the size of the boat and the crew. That's happening 3 to 5 days a week for the months of April and May. Once that kelp harvest comes in, we have it in stock. That's kind of what a 1 year looks like of actual farming after you've waited to get your lease.
Well, thank you for that. That's amazing. Liz, what's the determining factor in grading the kelp to ensure the highest quality?
There are a lot of factors that go into it. So we're looking at, the overall appearance. We're looking at the color of the blades.
Mm-hmm.
That tells us a lot about what nutrients there were in the water and how nutrient dense that kelp is. We're also making sure none of our other ocean critters are getting into the collection bags, and they're very small. They're very small critters, but it's open ocean, so it's kind of like when you get a head of lettuce that comes in from the supermarket and maybe you get a bug in there. It happens. It's grown outside. Similarly, this is grown in the ocean, and so every once in a while there are maybe some small snails that get in there. And so we have a lot of steps in our production facility where the kelp is inspected, it's washed, it goes through multiple processes of being shredded and chopped. So many eyes and many hands go over that before it ends up on the shelf. But on the boat, when it's first coming out of the water, that's the first place in order to make sure, okay, let's keep all of those things in the ocean where they belong. Make sure that none of that's coming into the facility as much as possible. And there's also, different sizes of kelp and making sure that we're getting as much uniformity and consistency as possible, that everything is remaining as food safe the whole way through. As soon as they fill a harvest container, they close it up. No foreign materials getting into anything, staying out of the sun, keeping things cool and wet. Those are all key jobs that the farmers do while they're doing their harvest.
Liz, how large is the average lease for growing kelp?
Most kelp farms in the state of Maine are about 4 acres.
That sounds like a lot of area on the water. Am I going to look out and see hundreds of buoys? Or am I not visualizing it correctly?
It sounds like a big area of water. It really isn't. Once you're, you imagine being on, the Casco Bay Ferry. Everything looks so much bigger when you're out there on that boat. Right. Especially like these kelp farms. They're pretty small. They're consolidated and they're very well organized. So the lines of buoys, they're straight. You can kind of see, oh, that's intentional. Instead of a whole bunch of lobster buoys they look kind of random, even though they're definitely not random. The fisherman has put them in a very specific location. Similarly, these farms are in a very specific location too. And so they have to remain inside their boundaries for the state. Right. So they have a certain area. The state holds them accountable to stay in those boundaries. So they can't just put a farm anywhere and they can't just have their buoys anywhere. And this is also happening from November to March, April. So it's the time when there are the least amount of recreational users on the water, the least amount of traffic happening on the water, and all those buoys are taken out of the water when the kelp is harvested. So that footprint, that surface footprint disappears in the summer.
Oh, that's a great point. There's a whole lot less traffic in the wintertime.
I mean, I will say there are a lot of commercial fishermen that still use the area all winter long. Yeah. But most of those people are fishing either offshore for a lobster or they're in scallop territory. And so by working with commercial fishermen, they're very well aware of the areas that are active year round. And so strategically, okay, I will not put my farm in a place that makes Joe unhappy because that's where he scallops. And I know that, so that's a key component to that site selection.
If I'm a farmer, the one thing I wanted folks to hear is that once I've got my lines in, my seeds that I've planted in the fall, I'm not going out there every week and fertilizing or adding nutrients. How much am I actually doing?
Kelp is a zero input crop. No feed, no fertilizer, no fresh water, no terrestrial land, no nutrients. Everything that we need in order to have a healthy crop is naturally occurring in the Gulf of Maine, in our pristine waters. And so that's why this area is really turning into a seaweed hub. It's well suited for it.
Liz, what about the winter weather, winter storms, freezing temperatures, Mother Nature's challenges?
Farmers have to go out after any major storm, right? You want to make sure all your gear's in place and that your crop's doing what you want, because we do get nor'easters in the winter. Yep. So you want to make sure after any really heavy wind or stormy event, you're checking on it. But it's kind of a weekly, once a week, when you get that one good day, you're going out and checking on it. And since most of the people we're working with are already working on the water, that's the day they're going to work.
So as I'm heading out to check my traps, I'm going to pass by the farm, make sure everything looks normal. And seaweed in general, and kelp specifically here, because we're talking about kelp, it's really good for the environment as well, right? As not only the amount of carbon dioxide being absorbed, you're going to tell me why.
Yeah, so kelp is an extractive species, which means that it's taking what's in its natural environment and using that in order to filter out, like you were saying, excess carbon, excess phosphorus, nitrogen. And so what we're really seeing right now is climate change is creating a more acidic environment. We're having excess CO2. By removing that, we're creating a localized, while the kelp is in the water, a local effect of less acidic water. And so that's really good for organisms that have shells, because they need to build those shells, and that can be a stressful process. It takes a lot of energy. And so lobsters, mussels, scallops, clams, all of those are benefiting from having kelp nearby them. It's easier for them to grow those shells, maintain their shell quality, and then invest in meat production and reproduction, all the biological components that take a lot of energy in order to do. We have some farm partners that actually are mussel farmers as well, and they co-culture the seaweed and the mussels on the same farming footprint. And they're actually able to measure the impact that they see on their mussel crops when the kelp is in the water growing beside those mussels.
I got to say, that is fascinating.
We've worked with partners from Bigelow Laboratories in order to actually measure that scientific impact that's happening, as well as with our farmer partners at Bangs Island Mussels.
What I didn't know until talking to you is that seaweed is considered a superfood. It's got minerals like iodine, calcium, magnesium, and good news here, it's low in calories and high in fiber, protein, omega-3 fatty acids. It just seems there's no end of benefits to growing, cultivating kelp. It's just amazing to me. If you were to look down the road a few years, Liz, what's your vision of success for the company, for the industry, and for the farmers?
Really, what we are aiming for is we want to have kelp farmers that are independently operating up and down the coast of Maine, multiple communities that are all seeing these added benefits, whether it be environmentally, socially, economically, all to do from seaweed. What that looks like to me is really 100 farmers, each farming 100,000 pounds by 2035.
It's an exciting vision, and I've got to say, why not? Liz, what would you like people listening to the podcast to take away from our chat today?
One thing I've learned about myself recently is I really love watching things grow. Keep a lot of house plants, but also this is a huge amount of kelp that we're growing, and when it starts, it's microscopic. So getting to see something that is almost invisible become millions of pounds, all coming in from multiple different people, is extremely gratifying. And this is happening, I call it the instant gratification crop.
Good name.
And coming in with a boat full of kelp is hugely satisfying for the farmers and for myself and my team. So that I do love. Honestly, I would hope that people would take away from this conversation that there is a lot of potential in Maine's blue economy, and the people that live here and work here in that space are some of the most resilient and adaptive individuals that are willing to put sustainability first, also keep their sense of self while pushing towards the future and looking to do what's right for their families and for their environment and their home.
No, I think it's a great sentiment. Okay, last question. Do you have a favorite tale of the sea, a book or a poem or a story or a song or something that you like to go back to and maybe takes you to a place of comfort? Or
I do have a song that I love that is almost a sea shanty, Fisherman's Blues.
by the Waterboys.
That is a pretty favorite of mine that I feel like is pretty representative of feeling a little bit like a cowboy at sea, doing something new. There isn't really a comparison of that feeling some days.
I like that. Liz, I want to thank you so much. Again, this has been a real treat for me personally, and I know folks listening in will have their eyes open to the promise of kelp. It can be part of their life. So thank you again.
Thank you so much for the invitation and the conversation today. I've had a great time talking with you.
That ends this episode of Tales of the Sea. That's the Waterboys playing a little bit of Fisherman's Blues. If you enjoyed this episode, please tell a friend or two. Thanks to my guest, Liz McDonald of Atlantic Sea Farms here in Maine, for giving us an insider look at the amazing product known as kelp.
I wish I was a fisherman, tumbling on the seas.
This episode was produced at Munjoy Studios in Portland, Maine. Special thanks to my producer, Jewel Selbo. And remember, you'll find this podcast, Tales of the Sea, wherever you stream your favorite podcasts. I'm Mark Wakeworth. Thanks for listening.